consider you having physical distancing barriers, so like a clear plexiglass. The next one is they want you to make changes to your protocols, so have your staff acting differently, do additional cleaning, and have all that be visible. But the very, very last thing in terms of our public health order is any protective equipment. So gloves, neither gloves nor masks have been mandated in BC, so that because they want you to do those other things first. And we're finding the only time that that's actually been a bit confusing since we've reopened is in the city of Vancouver, where people feel like they're in a higher risk area, so they want to see masks. But the second you drive past, we have like Toronto, we have Vancouver, and then we have Burnaby and Richmond. And so as you go like one suburb past Vancouver, people don't want to see masks. So the rules do seem to work quite, like not requiring PPE works for the most area of our province. It's just in our very densest cities right around the hub of Vancouver where that PPE seems to be a demand from customers. So our first lesson that we would have to share is that you really want to start planning for change while you're still closed. Because we thought, oh, we're so organized, we're going to get this thing, we're going to have protocols, we're going to have processes, we're going to have education. And then on a Tuesday, they said, okay, you guys are going to be able to open next Tuesday, and we didn't even get the regulations until Friday. So like it was really fast. So if you get and as a result, a lot of businesses haven't actually opened as quickly as they were allowed to open because they weren't in a position to do the things that they needed to do. So the first couple of things that we would say is get ready to bring more to the table. And the number one thing that we know, we did a whole bunch of labor market research before this happened, and millennials and Generation Z were already super interested in what you as a business cared about. Now, absolutely everybody cares what your business believes in. So you have to do the stuff as you're thinking about restarting, start thinking about how you're going to talk about what you're doing differently. Start thinking about how you're recognizing your staff, your connections to your community, how you're engaged with other businesses. Do you support local other businesses? Do you have like a local ice cream shop that you bring their local ice cream onto your restaurant menu because you're, instead of a larger supplier, you're supporting someone smaller? Are you making sure you have Ontario beers or Ontario wines on your wine list? Make sure you're talking about those connections because people are really key about this local message. So start thinking about those stories that you can tell when you reopen now. If you have time and you are still just doing the takeout, you want to start looking at your policies and procedures and get ready for things like updating kitchen job descriptions. Because when people are going to come back, they're going to come back to a job that's slightly different than they had before. If you can anticipate any of those changes now, that's what's going to help you be one of the first people to open the door and to be more successful. You need to make sure in your kitchen you're looking at those physical distances. It's likely going to be the same as everywhere else, which is 2 meters. We often say 6 feet, but it really is a 2 meter distance. You want to start thinking about how in your process you can look at those number of touches and enhance your cleaning protocols. So there's a lot of things that you can do to start thinking about this process before you even get there. The last two on this slide I think are really important to think about is if our rules require that you have a policy that people cannot come to work if they're sick, you need to make sure you have that in your toolkit for your restart. And if you're bringing people back to work, you want to have a written contract that they sign that says, I will not come to work if I am sick. Because they could still come to work if they are sick, but if you have at least a contract addendum to their job contract, you at least have covered it yourself as best you can. And you've educated them, and you've both agreed that they're educated and they understand your policies. So that's really important to make sure that you're covering yourself and your other team members. And the other thing that we're seeing is if you don't have a strong anti-harassment and anti-bullying policy in your business, you should make sure you have that and remind everybody of what it is. Because what we're finding is there's a lot of online bullying going on right now, and there's a lot of call-out culture. And so your staff may start to feel like they're being harassed by guests or other staff members. Why aren't they wearing a mask? Should they be wearing a mask? All those kinds of things. So take a few minutes to make sure you get that bullying policy written down and it's clear in your mind, so you can transfer that to your staff. Because at least in BC, any bullying that takes place online, if it's workplace related, is still your responsibility as an employer. So you want to just make sure you're getting ahead of that. In terms of your marketing and your menu, you really want to think about maximizing your ingredients and reducing your food waste. Starting, if you have a kitchen team that's still working with you right now while you're closed, start looking at test dishes and actually look at consistency and cost controls, because some ingredients are not going to be as available, and some things have gone up considerably in price. A lot of proteins have really increased in price over this time. So if you're getting your kitchen ready, get them to make the dish, get them to track the food cost, take those pictures of that finished dish that looks beautiful for social media, so that as you're getting your costing right, you're getting your images ready, and you're getting your story ready for social media. So if you're doing these things, do them as part of a process. And if you are looking at your menu, you also want to look at what's going well for you in terms of takeout right now, and start highlighting those in a different way on your restart menu, because you want to make sure that you continue to have takeout, and I'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of your marketing also, you do want to focus as much as you can on local channels, because people are referring a lot more to local news websites, if you have still a local newspaper, they are going to those sources because they want to see that hyper local messaging, and they want to see those local connections. If you're in a business park, or if you're in a neighborhood, you want to, if you don't already have one, get an A board, get a sandwich board, put on your sandwich board your weekly offerings, your hours, and make sure that's updated, because what we're finding in BC is a lot of people are going to the restaurants that they're walking by when they walk their dog. When they drive by on their way to pick up their prescription, like they're not going out of the house as often. So you need to have those A boards as a way to connect with people that are driving through your neighborhood. So number 2 is definitely stick with takeaway. Takeaway was the #1 growing trend in restaurants, and projected to grow 25% the next 20% year over year for the next 4 years. You need to try and think about how you can target takeaway becoming about 25% of your business, at least for the next year. This wasn't something that you should have been thinking about this already. So if you weren't, don't think of this as simply a pivot for COVID-19. Think of this as a pivot for, making sure you're actually connecting with this really strong growing trend. In terms of best practices for takeaway, as you restart and how you pivot your takeaway again, our cities across the province are actually allowing common outdoor seating in city parks. We're starting to allow drinking in city parks and parklets. So like literally taking over a parking space with some tables and chairs. If you can create a happy hour kit or a family picnic kit, and those are things that you can send people, they can come into your restaurant, get those the to-go kits, like a wine and cheese kit. So you're getting them the wine, and you're getting them a bunch of cheese and crackers to pair with them. Think about doing those kits, because people are getting tired of making their own food. They're starting to want to host those small parties. We're allowed up to 6 people right now. So they want somebody who's given them an idea of how to be the host, even if it's in the middle of a park on a blanket. Make sure you're streamlining your offers. And if you haven't thought about how well your meals travel, absolutely keep thinking about it. It's getting hotter. If your hot food is sitting in a hot car, is it going to get there and look like mush, and they're not going to want to come back to you? So do think about that, and then work on your margins. Again, the same as for your main menu. If you have a chance to take a picture of those items, and while you're doing the process of making them, just check your food costs. Those proteins are really out of control right now, particularly chicken and beef, but in the US, pork has gone up as well. So we may be facing that next. Again, if you haven't been thinking about these already, comfort foods are the things that are selling the most. We're finding that people are doing really well with things like date night kits. So you've got actually something that is designed for a couple, or a family pack where there's a couple of items that are designed for the parents who have more adventurous tastes and a couple items for the kids that are less adventurous. And it's all in one family deal that you can get. Or you can do Taco Tuesday or Wing Wednesday, and you have those as part of your offering for that day. So you want to make, and the last thing on takeaway is in BC we have banned styrofoam, and so we're now at the point where people are, and that was only in January. So there was a big push of like, hey, we're going to be better at takeaway, and we're not going to have bad packaging. And then all of a sudden we're like, holy goodness, everything has to be delivered in takeaway packaging. I think some people are being a little bit more lenient about what you're putting your takeaway in, but not everybody. So you really want to make sure that if your takeaway packaging isn't the best technologies and the most modern stuff, you do want to make sure you're keeping an eye on that. Again, market locally. You want to tag key accounts. Like we have BC Taste Better, Eat Drink by BC, at BCRFA. There's going to be tags that are specific to your community that you want to connect with people that are helping share your food stories. And if you're getting ready and you've got these photos of your dishes, and hopefully you're getting some photos of your staff, you want to make sure that you're sharing those pictures on your social media. If you're getting ready and you're saying, okay, we're going to take half of our tables and chairs out of the restaurant, do a time lapse on your cell phone and get a picture of, here's our restaurant before, here's our restaurant halfway through, here's our restaurant now. Make sure you're showing those physical changes that you're making, because people really, really want to see those changes. So if you're actually able to chronicle those changes and make sure that people are seeing that you're doing that, if you're doing a deep cleaning day, post on your social media. Today we're doing a deep cleaning day, ready for reopening. So the more you tell the story, the more you engage your customers on what you're doing, that is seeming to make a difference in terms of the public confidence that they have once you open your doors. So lesson number 3 is act on the core principles. So now we're going to go into the actual principles that we are required to have in BC. Number 1, we have no more than 50% of people of your previous capacity. Number 2, in a group, you can never have more than 6 people. And number 3, if you're having a private events are limited to 50 people, but they actually have to be in a separate space. So if you are having up to 50 people, it has to be in a room that once allowed for 100, and you can't have 50 people that are in a group together beside a group of 6, beside a group of 2 of other people. You have to have them in a contained space, because they will allow you to have people mix and mingle within that private grouping, but they can't be mixing and mingling with other patrons. In our case, for sit-down businesses, you are required to do contact tracing. But it is allowed to be through your reservation system, or if you're taking names at the door for tables and you normally would say, hey, can I get your name and phone number for your table, and we'll text you when your table is ready. You just want to keep that information. So you need, in our case, first name, last name, and a phone or an email. I think phone is easier because you can use it for that, call people to the table. In our case, you have to keep it for 30 days, but my guess is that it's already the same in Washington and in several other states. So this is something that you're likely going to have in your case as well. You don't actually have to do any of the contact tracing. That will be the government. It's just a question of covering yourself and making sure your guests are aware. And then in terms of compliance with these things, you are required to comply with public health orders with a specific act of our government. And there's huge fines for non-compliance with public health orders. So do think about where your compliance comes in. Physical distancing is, as we've talked about in that pyramid, it's the number 1 thing that businesses need to do. If an inspector is coming in, we have 2 layers of inspectors. We have WorkSafe inspectors and we have health authority inspectors. If the number 1 thing that they walk in and they see that your tables are 2 feet apart and there's people right next to each other that aren't in the same party, that's the single number one thing that's going to start them to start digging for other stuff you're doing wrong. So physical distancing. So in our case, physical distancing is 2 meters between people and things. So if you have chairs back to back with people in them, it has to be 2 meters. In the only way it's different is if they are in the same party, in a party of 6, they can be as close as they want in the space. In terms of bar and counter service, we have to have 2 meters between parties at a bar, if they're standing or if they're seated. So if you have cruiser high tops, you can have 3 people at a cruiser high top, but the next cruiser high top has to allow at least 6 feet between those people. And in our case, buffets are closed. So you do want to think about that as being something that is going to be a reality, at least for probably the first month of reopening. So they have some fairly specific recommendations in the WorkSafe document on how to create that physical distance. They want to see people behind plexiglass barriers at payment areas, and if it's a bar service or counter service, they do want to see that plexiglass covering the face of the person who's working at the face height, and anything that's at face height has to be 30 centimeters below the spit line and 30 centimeters above the average spit line. So it's about a 2-foot high barrier that has to be installed to make sure, and so you can have a pass through, but you want at that face level to have the barrier. And in our case, there's no information on barriers in the public health order, so it is subject to interpretation. So you're more likely to do better if you only use those barriers in the case of like counter service, like you would see in a grocery store, or like a Subway kind of thing, like added on top of the fresh cases. You want to add it like you would see in a grocery store. If you're trying to add it to create extra space between your tables, your health inspector may not accept that. So just think about how they do it and they allow it now in your grocery stores and how that might apply in your situation. In terms of your sample floor layouts, this is what we recommended, and we basically had absorption from the Minister of Health and WorkSafe on this, is to possibly have it so that your tables are facing only one way, so that the people are facing each other and you have a fully clear server path. And that if you have a fairly square space, you can have one route that the server works and one route that the busser works. So that in the case of the end of the table is clear, the server comes to the end of the table and serves there, puts the dish down, and then steps back and talks to the table. So in this case, they could give it on the top row, they could give it to both customers. If it's in the second row where you have the four chairs, they could bring it to the end of the table, and then the guests spread it out amongst themselves. They're already in a bubble together, so it's not you don't have to worry about them touching the multiple dishes. But having this open space at the end is really a benefit to your team who want to feel like they have a little space for themselves. If you have round tables, you do want to still remove that extra chair and give the server as much space as they can to go to the table. It helps with that the server wanting to come back to work, but it also helps with that experience when you get into the restaurant. Okay, I don't have to elbow in and wiggle my way, right? So you want to look at that in terms of how it works for you. The supporting of your staff is super important. We have had, I can't even tell you how many phone calls about staff not wanting to come back to work. It is a big deal. So what we're saying is, the first thing you have to do is literally start talking to your staff well before you're bringing them back, and start engaging them in the process. If you've been off work for 12 weeks already, you're going to have ideas about how you think you can make your workplace safer. So if you're a professional and you're keen and you take this very seriously, you're going to have ideas. You want to make sure you're having those conversations with your staff online now. You can have them by email, you can have a phone call with them, and get some ideas of what they're interested in. And then before you even get everybody into your business, you may want to have a Zoom meeting with your staff where you're acknowledging the ideas of your different team members in terms of how you can collectively restart together and get their buy-in. If you don't get their buy-in, if you're not listening to their suggestions, people are having a really hard time just saying, here's our rules and we want you to come back and do it our way. That isn't going that well. I mean, and you can only guess that it would be that case, but a lot of people are the owners are scrambling. They're trying to do things quickly. They think they've got the best systems. You have to really think about making sure that all levels of your staff are part of your systems development, because otherwise you're not going to get buy-in. In terms of creating work cohorts, so if you have an A shift and a B shift, so you have people who work, 10 to 4, and then you have people that work 4 till 10, depending on, because most people are working with reduced hours. You want to make sure that the first 3 people always work the morning shift and the second 2 people always work the afternoon shift. Try to do that for the first 2 to 3 weeks so that the people are working together, so that they don't feel like they're constantly mixing with new people on the staff, so that they add their colleagues into their personal bubble, so they're respecting their staff and the other staff in their teams. If you have to change it after the first 2 weeks, and you're adding more people because you're opening up a little bit more, or you're getting the number of traffic that you need to have more staff, do that. But as you first restart, make sure you have the people working together. It adds to confidence, and you can really make sure you've got the right mix of skills if you're creating those small teams. In terms of break times and start times, one of the things that has been causing some of the screw ups in large institutions is that everybody arrives for a 9 o'clock start, everybody leaves for a 6 o'clock start, everybody's like crunched through the entry to get into the business, and everyone's crunched in the change rooms to change their clothes. What you want to do is, if you have a large staff, if you have a small staff, it doesn't matter. If you have a larger staff, you do want to have some people starting at 8:15, some people starting at 8:30, some people starting at 8:45, and the same with breaks. Don't have people all lingering together, mingling and lingering, because that is when you're going to get that disease transmission if somebody has it. If it's not possible to maintain physical distance, or your government requires that you do have masks in your workplace, you want to have a real engaged conversation on Zoom about what that looks like, because in restaurants in particular, and in the summer when it's hot and masks are sweaty and gross, people are not loving this idea, and they're wearing their mask, but then they're taking the mask off, putting the mask on, taking the mask off, putting the mask on. That is if that's what's going to happen in your business and you have the option of not having masks, don't have masks. You're better not to have masks and have people never touch their face than you are to have masks and have them constantly wiggling and jiggling with the mask and really giving people the message that we hate this, it's uncomfortable, and we're not actually following the protocols anyway. So do think about that. And then we are required in BC to have a staff contact who is the person answering the questions about COVID-19. So if you have somebody who will be the point person to answer questions and look at other protocols, that's probably a good idea. You want to, of course, obviously everything's going to be about reduced touch points. In our case, you're mandated to make sure you don't have people waiting in your restaurant. That sort of helps you with the contact tracing piece. They come in, give you your phone number, they go outside and wait, you text them, and they come back in. You definitely want to do things like the barriers between the payment counters. If you have an active hostess station, you can put the plexiglass around the hostess station. If you have a hostess that actually always works the door, you may want to have that person actually opening the door and giving people the option of a hand spray with hand sanitizer as they come in. So people aren't actually touching the door, but the person who opens the door for your business. And in that case, that person may feel more comfortable wearing gloves, and no one's going to be upset if they do. So do think about that. Hand sanitizer is a big must. You can, in BC anyway, use the ones that are being made by breweries. So if you're working with a local brewery, you may want to ask the local brewery if they are making hand sanitizer, and that with their next beer delivery, they can deliver you some hand sanitizer as well. Because getting it from your food service wholesaler is not always going that well. So, get your dollar store spray bottles, get your hand sanitizer from the local brewery, get them to give you a sticker so that they know that's from a local brewery, because it's kind of a cool story. And then you have it in your spray bottle. If you have the ability to have people self-seat, so you have less connections with the staff, You can put numbers on tables and say, or just direct someone, that's your table, they go to that table. The other thing that we have talked about for people is having a disc. So like maybe it's a piece of wood that's red on one side and green on the other. Maybe it's a laminated circle or laminated square, red on one side, green on the other. You give it to the guests when they come in. It goes on their table. Red side up if they don't need service, green side up if they need something from you. So if instead of going by 3 times, are you ready to order, are you ready to order, are you ready to order, and exposing that your staff people and the customer to sort of a few awkward conversations, if you have that disc, the greens, they look to the table, they see the green side up, they say, oh, okay, I'm supposed to go over and talk to the person and ask and get their order. Some little things like that can make it just a little bit easier for you. In terms of front of house, I showed you on the diagram, you may want to have people leave the food and the drinks at the edge of the table, the guests spread it out themselves. In terms of takeaway, if they're not finished all their food, you do want to do it like we do in Chinese restaurants in Vancouver. You get everybody, the takeout containers come to the table, people pack their own takeaway, and then they leave with the takeaway that they've packed. In terms of between seatings, it is mandated that you basically return the table to absolutely nothing. Do not keep your caddies, your ketchup, your sriracha, any of those things on the tables. Only bring them out when they're needed. If you keep them on the tables, it's a lot of extra wiping. If you take them and then bring them when people need them, even salt and pepper, it reduces a step for you guys in terms of extra sanitization. And if you have any self-service kinds of things like straws, coffee lids, those kind of things, you maybe want to have less of them out at any time. So be refilling them more often instead of having a big stack that people can grab and then more people are touching them. For back of house, where we are in terms of back of house is if you don't, if you imagine an old-fashioned diner where there's the kitchen is at the back of the house and the front of house is the front of house. A lot of bars in Vancouver have started trying to turn their actual bar into sort of a counter service situation, so that the kitchen brings it to the bar, it passed through, and then the servers take it from that side. So the servers are not entering the kitchen as much. That is something that maybe in that first stage you may feel more comfortable doing. It doesn't work for every business, but if you have a place where you can create sort of a pass-through scenario, you may want to do that because less people in the kitchen makes it easier for your kitchen staff to have that 6 feet of separation in what is usually a very tight area. And then you want to really make sure in terms of your kitchen that you're separating where food comes in to the kitchen and where food goes out of the kitchen, and also where food comes back into the kitchen on dirty plates. So making sure you're really creating that separation of clean and dirty, super important. For deliveries, we basically said that anybody who is accepting a delivery should be wearing masks and gloves just to make themselves feel more comfortable. But if you can unbox things before they come into the kitchen and only bring in, instead of bringing the street boxes into your kitchen, bring just the food boxes into your kitchen, will also help in terms of space, having people maintain their space, but also less bugs coming into your kitchen. I think this is the last one. I can't tell because I redid this for you guys yesterday, is that the number one thing is about, after you're looking at those protocols, is making sure that you have that enhanced cleaning and sanitation. So if you're changing anything, document those processes, train your staff on them, make them repeatable. And in our case, you actually have to post your public-facing changes in your window. People aren't doing it, but they're eventually going to get in trouble for it. You need to say, we are cleaning bathrooms every 30 minutes, or we're cleaning counters every 30 minutes. We're using this kind of sanitizer that's approved. So some of those protocols, there is going to be requirement for visibility. When the WorkSafe inspector comes into a business in British Columbia, they first ask for that safety plan, and then they walk through to see if you're doing it. That is the number one thing that they're doing, is saying, okay, what did you commit to, and are you doing that? So if you don't have the full plan out for your customers, if you have just a short version for your customers or short version on your website, you want to have the full version of the plan at your hostess station behind the bar so that if an inspector comes in, you're ready to answer the question. The more organized you are, the more likely we as government, we spend our time trying to lobby government on your behalf and say, hey, they're awesome. They don't, 50% isn't enough. We want you to have 70%. If you guys aren't doing the 50% right, we're never going to get them to negotiate for 70%. So having those protocols visible, ready, handling these things properly is really going to help people in Ontario lobby on your behalf to speed up the process. So if you do want to look at what we have available to you, you can go into our toolkit. So bcrfa.com is where we've got health check templates, we've got a restart checklist, we've got best practice ideas for front of house, back of house, rehiring, beverage service, reduced capacity, sample decals, medical resource list. Like you can go into, it's all open on our bcrfa.com. There's a banner across the top, click on that, go in and scavenge anything you want from our website that works for you. Like it's the bet, have us do the work for you. If you can use our work, we're pleased to have you use our work. Some of the files are even Word files, so you literally are downloading an active Word file and you can cut and paste whatever you want from that to make your own safety plan. And then when you're ready and that you have the rules, you can comply with the other side, but we have it all typed up because the government had an editable PDF that most people couldn't edit. So we typed it into Word, you can use that. We have a protocol for the health check that everybody signs. It's in Word. So you can do those things, take them from us, steal them, use them, no problem. And then we have signs like these ones that say, this is the room, the occupancy. So these won't work for you because I say Work Safe BC, but this is the kind of thing you'll probably see on your site. Again, anything you need from us is here at bcrfa.com, and then the membership email to reach out to. So that is everything I have to share with you for now, but if you want to unmute yourselves and ask me questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I just want to interject there, Samantha. I'm sure there will be lots of questions, but wow, like that was invaluable information, I thought. So yeah, I'm sure everybody has, and we've actually, about the outdoor patio space, we have a special meeting at 1:30, a Zoom with the mayor of Newmarket, who's trying to push through a program like that to do exactly that, to create a little bit more outdoor space so that restaurants and cafes can increase occupancy. So that's happening at 1:30 today too. So.
And for people who are like we are open only at 50%, and our anticipation is that and so we opened on May 19th, and then they're saying sort of around June 15th we may hear a change to that, or more permissions for different kinds of businesses. Mm-hmm. Even if they say, oh, all of a sudden you might be able to have 70% occupancy, they may still say you have to have physical distancing. So if you have the opportunity to apply for an expanded patio, you want to apply for that expanded patio, because right now you're probably okay with 50% on your patio and 6 feet distance. Mm-hmm. But if you can then get 70%, all of a sudden the distance between the tables becomes a big rigmarole. Right. So you want to apply for those expansions as soon as they're available. People do feel way more comfortable on patios. The lineups that we're seeing for restaurants are patio lineups. If you can keep that distance and get a little bit more space between your tables, that's going to be the big win for you. People don't want to sit too close to other people.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to end your screen share there, Samantha? And then we'll see if I'm sure people have some questions and they want to chime in. And I thought of you, Jennifer McLaughlin, talking about, and Carl, with the themed packages. So Samantha, Jennifer's been doing right off the hop online cooking with chefs in different parts of the world and sending out all of the food for them to prep. So there's been some great collaborations with some of the restaurants that are on here today. So I'll just throw it to you guys and see if anybody has any questions for Samantha. I'm sure you do.
Thanks, Jen. That's amazing. And if you don't mind, I would like to just really say, Samantha, this is the golden ticket to make me excited to open again. I've been digging my heels in, saying I'm not opening until this government versus some of my risk. And I'm going to rip off all of your tools. Thank you very much. As my best practice, that you just told me my risk has been averted a little bit, and I appreciate that. That to me, like, I'm emotional. So thank you for putting the time in for that.
Well, we're happy, you know, dealing with operators day in and day out. We know that if we can create tools that you can literally plug and play for your business, the less thinking the thinking that you have to do has to be around your business, not the other stuff. So if we can help with that, that's what we're trying to do for sure.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's just what really made a lot of us small business owners really nervous, is opening back up and then risking ourselves, you know, some sort of somebody contracting it and us not having any defense to say we tried everything we could not to have that happen. So thank you again. Thanks for being a best practice. I don't have any questions for you because I think everything was just right on point from everything that I've been looking at. So thank you. And I'm going to really roll out a lot of what you talked about today. I appreciate it a lot.
And Rick, you've got a question?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. Samantha, great stuff. I'm not in the restaurant business, but I do operate a text messaging business, and I've been trying to pivot to find alternate applications for my service. And I was thinking about contact tracing, so somebody could use my text messaging service to you know, for is your table ready? Here's a link to a menu, but more importantly, to capture customers' information so that they'd have their name and phone number for contact tracing purposes. We're not mandated in Ontario, and I'm not yet, to capture that information. Is it, you said it is in BC. Is it something that is readily done by every restaurant and easily captured?
So the public health order came into effect on May 19th, and that is the last item in the public health order, and the public health order is the thing that has the biggest fine for non-compliance. So in terms of quick service, it's not mandated. So if you have, like,
Right.
if you're at Starbucks and you're dropping in, getting a coffee and buggering off, it's the same as if you were going to the grocery store. So it's not required.
Okay.
If you're going to Pizza Hut, the same kind of situation. If, however, you have people coming into your business, they're sitting down, they're having a meal with you, you do need to track their information. And in most cases, people who are having reservations already have started a system where they use a reservation or they have a list of people at the door. It doesn't need to be complicated. That's the thing about our Dr. Bonnie, is that she's prescriptive, but she's not obnoxious. So she'll say, this, you have to have, the order literally says, you have to have the first name, the last name, an email, and a phone number for one person in each party. So that's what it says. So it's not like you don't have to put it in a fancy format. You could literally have it on this page is for Tuesday, this page is for Wednesday, this page is for Thursday. It doesn't need to be too complicated, but at the end of the day, just asking your guests for that name, or in your case, giving your customers a chance to have a text message system that works, having that tracking, people do feel like it's helping them make sure that they're showing that they're making changes.
And reassurance to customers as well.
Yeah. And there in British Columbia anyway, they also enacted a law saying that if you collect that information for the information you collect to make a reservation cannot be used for any other purpose. So it's not like it can literally be given to the government in the incident of a contact tracing. Mm-hmm. You still have to get permission to add it to your mailing list or those kind of things. Right. So there's no loss of privacy by giving somebody your cell phone number to make sure you have a table.
Right. Okay.
Samantha, I absolutely loved your points and suggestions on telling your story and keeping people up to speed on what you're doing. I thought that was awesome. One thing I had thought of, and I don't think it was touched on, but what are you doing there with respect to menus and menus being handed out?
So there's two, so we have a whole back of house document, and I think it's like 6 pages long. So do go on our toolkit there and see if there's anything in those documents that is useful to you. For menus, we have three sort of core recommendations for menus. One, single page laminated, so you can wipe those, like put sanitizer on them, spray them, and reuse them. Second, if you feel like you could do like a feature menu and you literally do everything on today's feature is a piece of paper and then recycle it once it's been used. Or if you're in a counter service or quick service or cafe style, increase your use of chalkboards, digital menu boards, so that people can order, you know, I want number 5 or I want number 4, and have the boards above your counter for ordering. And if it's chalkboards, it's rotatable, so you can change based on what you have available and what you have coming in. So it depends on your setting. We sort of said to people who are small, sit down, family style, like family restaurants, maybe start with, you know, like do you guys have Summerlicious? I know they have it in Toronto, where you have like a prefix kind of menu special. If you're just reopening, maybe this is the time to do a prefix, 2 choices for appetizer, 2 choices for main, and 2 choices for desserts, and have that really limited menu. People are going to be okay with it. If you do a beautiful job of it, they don't need more than the prefix setup. Mm-hmm. And then that doesn't have you having to laminate your menus or start from scratch on something. Do something really strategic, do a theme for this week, see how it goes, and then maybe do that paper menu that doesn't cause you too much money, but it also can be changed up on what you can get for ingredients.
Great. I wanted to just let everybody know, we didn't think we could record these breakout rooms, but I was able to. So if everybody's okay with that, I hit record so that we do have this. I mean, I know that Samantha provided all that other stuff, but we'll make sure when Tyler sends out a thank you and a wrap up that is there. And Samantha, I have your whole presentation as well, so you're fine with me sharing that as well?
Yeah, I can resend it to you. I changed some of the title. I changed the order of how I presented it from what I sent you yesterday. It's the same slides, are just in a different order.
Well, honestly, just incredible. Oh, Anne-Marie, you've got a question there?
Yeah, hi, Samantha, thanks so much. I just had a question about the with the reopening, and you were saying groups of 50 or more as long as they're in a separate space. So
no, just up to 50. It's no more than groups of
no more than 50. So we're in the events business at a golf course I'm with, and the government's proposing 25 people inside and 50 outside. So, and they're talking about a staged effect. So just to clarify, you guys started with 50 right off the hop when restaurants were allowed to reopen as well. It all came out in the same phase?
So any private function is, and any sort of sector is 50. In restaurants, we are allowed 50% capacity. So if your original capacity was 500, you can have 250 as long as you have 6 feet social distancing. But you can't have any single group of people that sits together be more than 6. Okay. So your inside and outside is split in half, and then those groups within a shared space are up to 6. But for private functions, private space, private function is the maximum of everything is 50.
Okay, and then is there also like a staged effect about how long before they'll increase the next numbers? Like we're kind of hearing here in Ontario that, you know, the first phase would go out and then maybe the numbers would increase after like 2 to 4 weeks, depending, I guess, on what's happening with the, you know, numbers. Have you guys experienced?
We are at 3 weeks.
Okay.
Let me think. No, we're at 2.5 weeks. On Tuesday will be 3 weeks.
Okay.
So they say there's a 2-week incubation period. So she is saying, Dr. Bonnie is saying that they are looking at starting a review of how it's going next Tuesday, which is 3 weeks in, and then after 4, with the idea that after 4 weeks, they'll have 2 weeks of data on whether cases are starting to go up. That's when they're looking at opening hotels and, you know, more travel locations, those kinds of things, because we're still closed for all of that. She has, however, said like 900 times that she's not going to allow more than 50 people at private functions for the entire summer. So she has been pretty transparent that through till the end of September, at least, she's not interested in groups of more than 50, but we're somewhat hopeful that she will be moving the 50% up, you know, as long as you can, and it'll be the question of what she allows, if she allows relaxation of physical distancing or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, people?
Just one thing to go back to contact tracing for a second. I was speaking to Open Table originally when they were pausing everybody's reservation bookings during the time that we were all going to be shut down. And so they will be providing questions for contact tracing when people are booking their reservations through Open Table. Now, I know that there are some restaurants that either don't use Open Table or don't have a lot of business coming from there. But in Lobo's case, actually more than 50% of our diners are coming from Open Table. And I found just in my interactions with our customers for takeout, and I'm sure other people have as well, people are really open to providing that information with that respect. And Ontario is so strong when it comes to the PIPEDA Privacy Act sort of stuff. I don't foresee it being a problem. So for any other restaurants that are maybe worried about having to broach that subject with their customers, I think we need to go in forward with confidence because everybody sort of understands the big picture there.
And, you know, in our case, I think if you got 95% and one person was just an unmitigated nightmare, and refusing to provide it, I mean, you may not want that person in your restaurant in the first place because they may be somebody who is disrespecting your other rules with your other guests, so it may be a sign that you don't want them. But if for example, one of your staff forgets to ask somebody, I don't think it's going to be the end. Like that doesn't seem, even though the provincial health order is the most enforceable thing, I think if you forget one time, as we get used to it, I don't think it's going to be a meltdown. But I think you do want to think about whether if somebody refuses to give it to you, whether you want that person in your business. Because that is a different movie. Because you do want to, you know, what we keep saying to people is you want to make sure your staff are safe, right? So if you have like, one of the things on one of those signs is, please don't come to our business, and you probably should put this on your social media too. Please don't come to our business if you're feeling sick. Come next week when you're feeling better. Like, remind your customers that you want to see them, but you only want to see them if they're well. Because that protects your staff too. And it also sets a culture of like, we're looking out for each other. We don't want to buy into this, you know, if you cough all over my restaurant, all of a sudden I have a problem, right?
Wonderful. Okay, I think with that, unless does anybody have any other questions, as I mentioned, I'm hopping on in 20 minutes. So Julia, I did send you a separate note in the chat there. I didn't know if you wanted me to sign you up for the 1:30 with the mayor talking about the patio and sidewalk expansion, which I think the town is looking, you know, for input. And if it goes through, it would be, as Samantha had mentioned, like no red tape. So if you have the opportunity to, I know you've got 2 patios in your establishment, but if you can only operate 2 at half capacity and add a 3rd. So if you want, just give me a thumbs up and I'll register you and send you the Zoom link.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Well, with that, any last comments? Again, Samantha, you know, on behalf of our member restaurants who are on here, I can't thank you enough. I just think it was really, really great information. And I think, as Jennifer said, you know, a good takeaway, and it's given everyone a little bit of hope today because everyone's still waiting just to go to a restaurant and eat outside. So I think this has been awesome.
and you can just, yes, Carl?
I just had a quick question just about sort of how the general, I guess, reception is. So, you know, you mentioned patios were popular and you're at 50% capacity, is that right?
Yeah.
So what's the what's the mood and what's the response from the general public? Are restaurants now, busy and lined up? By busy, I mean busy at 50%, or like how does that work?
We had restaurants, so we had our touch base call with our 70 people, and on that call are the director of Starbucks for Canada, the director of All Earls, Joey, Cactus, Keg, all big chains, because a lot of them are based out here in Richmond. So a lot of those people are on our calls. So we're sort of getting from the big Canadian brands down to the, a guy who has 50 seats are represented on the call. Some of the sort of neighborhood restaurants had hour-long waits for patio, starting in the morning on the weekend and lasting all day long.
Yeah, that seems obvious, but what about the indoor dining? So is there reduced capacity? Is there still...
what they were saying was that Eva is a woman on our committee, and she has 5 destination places. So she runs places that normally a tea house and Seasons in the Park. So it's in the middle of our Queen Elizabeth Park with a big view of the city. They were hit way more the day that it was raining. People were even willing to sit inside on a sunny day, but the day that there was a little bit of rain, they were like, ugh, it was dodgy. I mean, it would have been dodgy anyway, but they have found specifically people are more excited to be out or out in the world on the sunny days, and then they're a bit more adventurous. So we're a little bit worried that weather is going to be a bigger factor this summer than it is any other time.
So you're saying they have more appetite to eat inside on a sunny day than a rainy day?
Yeah, because they've made it there, right? They're there, and there's a lineup. They're like, hey, I'm here now. I'm committed, right? So they will go inside. And then in the evening, it's still getting cold here. So people are, they walk down to the restaurant. So they get their little walk in, they go to the neighborhood restaurant. So that stuff is going fairly well. But we're also finding that things like getting that picnic in the park package that you can add to your business so in the case of the restaurant that's down, I live in an area that has 3 restaurants. The one if you can get your family takeaway of the burgers and whatever, and then you literally get it and you go down half a block to the park, that's also that's helping add to that business and reduce some of the lines. Is to make those takeaway options that you can just use in a public space that's nearby. But we're also having a lot of people get those patio expansions approved.
Right.
And they're being approved in lots of jurisdictions in 48 hours.
I think that's what is the hope and the plan here as well. And even where there's a sidewalk or a parking space on one side of our main street, restaurants can, but on the other they can't. So just looking at ways to, where possible, just modify it and use some of the space.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to hop off because I got to hop back on with basically all of you restaurant people in about 10 minutes with the mayor to talk about exactly that. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.